From our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Aishah Ashraf. Our top story of the day: Bangladesh has blamed India for severe flooding that has devastated 8 districts, claiming 20 lives and affecting 5 million people. Bangladesh's Information and Broadcasting Advisor Nahid Islam criticized India for its inhumanity and non-cooperation after Indian authorities allegedly opened the sluice gates of the Dumbur Dam in Tripura without warning. The flood's impact has been most severe in the districts of Feni, Noakhali, and Kumilla. Reports indicate that the uncontrolled release of water from the Dumbur Dam led to the catastrophic floods. Bangladeshi officials have accused India of failing to communicate crucial flood data, despite India's commitment to share real-time information through the Anpur observation station. Roughly 600 students gathered at Jagannath University, accusing India of orchestrating the floods in retaliation for the recent political upheaval that ousted pro-India Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina after 15 years. The Bangladeshi Jamaat-e-Islami party has condemned the incident, alleging India deliberately created a disaster to submerge the Kamala region. The party has denounced what it calls India's inhuman act, further straining diplomatic relations between the two nations. Muslim News has a special report on Indian propaganda against Bangladesh. Let's watch.
Bangladeshis call it the second liberation, having joyfully liberated themselves from the tyranny of Sheikh Hasina, who fled to India. That's right, India. India has been her second home. India has now unleashed a disinformation war against Bangladesh. This is a changed India. The killers of Gandhi rule India today. The RSS-BJP regime controls the government and commands the streets. They also claim to operate 60,000 social media cells. Their guns are normally aimed at Indian Muslims, but this time they are targeting Bangladesh. Indian media outlets are claiming that a Hindu genocide is taking place in Bangladesh. This second liberation of Bangladesh was not without violence. 400 plus students were killed by police and government thugs. Thousands were injured. There was retaliation as well. This violence, however, was political, not aimed at Hindus. In some instances, Hindu temples and families were attacked. However, in most places, it was students guarding the Hindu temples. But Indian media chose to hide the truth. A BBC fact check exposed the Indian media propaganda. Here is an office of Awami League where thugs were coming out to attack peaceful students. It is on fire. Indians say a Hindu temple was attacked. BBC says no, it is a political office of Awami League.
Please, I would earnestly request all my Indian journalist friends that you also do fact checking. Why should the BBC have to take this burden? You are established media and you have a reputation. Why can't you do your fact checking?
And watch this. Indians claim it is the house of a Hindu cricketer, Liton Das. BBC says it is the house of a Muslim parliamentarian from Awami League. This is another video of the violence. Indian media says it is a Hindu temple. Alt News says it is a coffee shop in Bangladesh. Indians claim Muslim mobs looted Hindu shops, but Alt News says this retail store is owned by a Muslim businessman. Fact checkers have identified more than 40 instances of fake news by Indians. But why? Why did Indian media and Hindu extremists participate in this propaganda campaign? The motive was to incite violence against Muslims in India. And it worked. Indian Muslims have become victims of revenge attacks by Hindu mobs. Propagandists also tried to portray Sheikh Hasina as a savior of minorities in Bangladesh. Indian government has consistently backed Hasina and her authoritarian rule. Hasina was often labeled as India's puppet by her opponents in Bangladesh.
I mean, there are a group of people in Bangladesh who have always termed her to be, serving India's interest. She was always an Indian sort of, sympathizer, putting Bangladesh's interest above that of India.
Perhaps it was India that set her up for their own vested political interests, and now taken her back.
Israeli strikes have killed 30 Palestinians and injured 66 others in the past 24 hours, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. 2 Palestinians were killed and several others wounded when an Israeli air raid struck eastern Deir al-Balah. The attack also hit a gathering of civilians at Al-Jafarawi neighborhood entrance. Additional casualties were reported as an airstrike targeted the Al-Az bin Abdul Salam school, a makeshift shelter for displaced civilians. The attack, which occurred north of the Nusayrat camp, resulted in numerous fatalities, including women and children. Further north in Al-Mufti, a drone strike on another shelter killed 3 more people, including 2 women. In the southern Gaza cities of Khan Yunis and Rafah, medics recovered 6 bodies, including 2 women, from recent Israeli attacks. The UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees has reported a dire water crisis in Deir al-Balah, with only 3 out of 18 wells operational, leading to an 85% shortfall. Hamas has rejected new Israeli ceasefire conditions proposed in Egypt, demanding adherence to a plan backed by President Joe Biden and the UN Security Council. Israel has killed at least 40,435 Palestinians and wounded approximately 93,534 in its war on Gaza, according to official figures. However, a report in the British medical journal The Lancet last month estimates that as many as 186,000 Palestinians may have been killed by Israel since last October. Israel faces accusations of genocide at the International Court of Justice, which has ordered a halt to military operations in the southern city of Rafah. In her acceptance speech for the Democratic Party's 2024 nomination, Vice President Kamala Harris called for a ceasefire in Gaza amid Israel's ongoing war. However, she is facing criticism for not endorsing a halt to U.S. weapons transfers to Israel, which critics argue is essential to securing peace. Despite expressing concern over the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, Harris reiterated the administration's commitment to Israel's right to defend itself without condemning its actions directly. Palestinian rights groups and political analysts have accused Harris of lacking the courage to diverge from the current U.S. policy, which they say fuels the war. Human rights organizations and U.S. voters seeking a change are calling for a more decisive stance, including an arms embargo on Israel. Lawmaker Ilhan Omar said for a ceasefire in Gaza, the U.S. needs to stop sending weapons to Israel. Harris's stance, critics argue, falls short of the bold leadership needed to address the dire situation in Palestine. In related news, Democratic presidential nominee and Vice President Kamala Harris has raised $540 million in campaign donations since July 21st, according to media reports. Harris's campaign chair, Jen O'Malley Dillon, made the announcement after the Democratic Party convention in Chicago last week. Dillon said Harris's campaign raised an additional $82 million during the 4-day convention, bringing the total to $540 million. She has noted a significant increase in donors and reported 200,000 new volunteers have signed up since the convention began. Dillon noted that a third of the donations came from first-time contributors, with teachers and nurses being the top donor professions. Scammers are exploiting AI video generators to create convincing deepfake videos featuring famous figures like Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and Jeff Bezos, luring people into fraudulent investments. They mimic voices and facial expressions using fake graphics and new logos to lend credibility. Experts say these fake videos produced cheaply and quickly promise high returns on non-existent investment opportunities, preying particularly on the elderly. They also warned that as technology advances, these scams will become increasingly convincing. Despite efforts by platforms like YouTube and Facebook to combat such fraud, deepfake technology continues to evolve, posing a growing threat. A Tennessee man has been charged with making serious threats against President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and former President Barack Obama. U.S. Attorney Kevin G. Ritt says Kyle Alton Hall allegedly issued these threats on social media on July 27th, including plans to kill and crash Biden's plane. He faces up to 15 years in prison under federal charges. Hall's parents have expressed concern about his mental health, citing recent bizarre behavior and possible schizophrenia. They have chosen not to bail him out, fearing he might pose a further threat. These charges follow heightened tensions and multiple threats against politicians ahead of the November election. GOP states challenge Biden's new immigration policies. Details come after the break. Stay tuned and we will be right back. Welcome back. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and 14 other Republican-led states have filed a lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security and Biden administration officials over recent immigration policy changes. Paxton criticized the new policies, claiming they undermine U.S. borders and laws. The lawsuit, supported by American First Legal, targets two key changes. The first allows undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens to stay in the country during their residency application. The second permits undocumented college graduates to apply for work visas without fear of deportation. Critics argue these policies worsen the immigration crisis. The Biden administration is also under fire from liberal groups for a recent executive order limiting asylum claims and enforcing stricter border controls. A former Memphis police officer has pleaded guilty to federal charges in connection with the death of Black motorist Tyre Nichols. Emmett Martin is among 5 officers fired over Nichols' fatal beating in January 2023, which was videotaped by 5 Black officers. Martin admitted to depriving Nichols of his civil rights and tampering with witnesses. Although the plea agreement marks a step forward, Nichols' family is demanding full justice. Experts say Martin's plea hints at him potentially testifying against his former colleagues. Another officer involved in beating Nichols, Desmond Mills, also pleaded guilty and received a reduced sentence. The federal trial is set for September 9th. Meanwhile, the spotlight remains on the broader issues of police brutality and systemic reform. Outgoing Indonesian President Joko Widodo faces a lawsuit over allegations he ordered the removal of hijabs during the nation's Independence Day celebrations. The lawsuit, filed by the Indonesian Supervisory, Control, and Law Enforcement Agency, as well as the Mega Bintang Foundation, will be heard on August 29th in Solo, Central Java. The complaint alleges dozens of students from the national flag-hoisting troop Paski-Braka were forced to remove their hijabs before participating in August 17th ceremonies. Officials deny these claims, asserting all regulations were followed voluntarily. The lawsuit seeks over $12,000 for affected students and demands a public apology from the president, who will step down in October. In the past month, Sudan has seen a spike in cholera cases, with 28 deaths reported, according to the World Health Organization, or WHO. The outbreak, declared on August 12th, has resulted in 658 cases across 5 states, with a notable case fatality ratio of 4.3%. Kassala region is the hardest hit, recording 473 cases. The current wave is attributed to severe floods, poor sanitation, and inadequate hygiene, particularly affecting displaced communities in refugee camps. WHO and other UN agencies are responding with emergency measures. That includes a recent 3-day vaccination campaign in Kassala that administered 51,000 doses. Despite these efforts, funding gaps and ongoing conflict are hampering effective management of the crisis. The WHO urges continued international support to address the severe health needs exacerbated by the outbreak and related challenges. WHO representative in Sudan, Shibli Sabani, is urging donors to support their efforts there. ISIS has claimed responsibility for a brutal knife attack at a festival in Solingen, Germany, in which 3 people were killed and 8 injured. The group described the assailant as a soldier of ISIS and said the attack was in retaliation for injustices against Muslims in Palestine. The German authorities have a 3rd suspect in custody in connection with the attack and have concluded their hunt for perpetrators. The motive and direct links between the attacker and ISIS remain unclear. Billionaire founder and CEO of Telegram Pavel Durov was arrested at Le Bourget airport near Paris on Saturday evening. He was taken into custody as he disembarked from his private jet arriving from Azerbaijan. French media sources report Durov was detained under a French arrest warrant involving allegations related to Telegram's operations. The warrant, which was issued by the National Anti-Fraud Office, is reportedly linked to claims of Durov's non-compliance with legal demands. Telegram, which boasts more than 900 million users, is known for its minimal content moderation. It has drawn praise for promoting free speech and criticism for enabling disinformation and extremist content. No official confirmation has been provided by French authorities at this time. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has pledged support on the 7th anniversary of Rohingya Genocide Day, which is observed on Sunday. He says the U.S. continues to honor the victims and stand with the survivors seeking justice and accountability for these atrocities. 7 years ago, the majority of the ethnic Rohingya Muslim community was forced out of Burma's Rakhine state due to a military genocide, according to the UN and other international organizations. The Bangladeshi Foreign Ministry says its country now houses more than 1.3 million Rohingya in Cox's Bazar district and Bhasan Char Island. That's all from our Toronto studios. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. Your support is needed more than ever to continue our mission of providing informative, educational, and inspiring content to Muslims in North America and around the world. Donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam.